Good afternoon and welcome to this installment of the Boost Your Skills webinar series, where we enlist the advice of specialist experts in order to help you make the most out of your university experience and to acquire the skills to help you succeed and develop both professionally and on a personal level. I'm Siddharth, representing your Boost Your Skills team. This event is in webinar format, so you will not be able to turn on your cameras and mics, but we would still love to hear from you through the chat function. This is a safe space with no judgments being passed, so please feel free to ask questions without fear or worry. If you are still anxious, feel free to message myself anonymously and I will pass it on. This webinar will consist of an interactive session with live actors and some time at the end for Q&A. It is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel, so don't worry if you've missed something. We'll be sharing a link to the video after the event. Finally, a big thank you to all our attendees who have pre-submitted questions. Our guest today is Deborah Stevens, trainer, coach, inspiring speaker, and founder of Dramatic Training Solutions. She's been running award-winning workshops for over 26 years and has worked with thousands of people all around the world. Her book, Standout, is available now from your student store with a 15% discount. Deborah is joined by Drew Rice and Simon Dedeni. Drew is a professional actor working in the business area for 10 years. He's a Myers-Briggs practitioner and coach, helping people to appreciate and respect differences. He's a partner in Deborah Stevens Training and Coaching. Simon is an actor, writer, and theatre director, as well as an experienced trainer and role player. He has an MA in Politics, Philosophy, and Economics from Oxford University and a diploma in acting from the Webber Douglas Academy. So now, without further delay, I would like to hand over to Deborah, Drew, and Simon.
There you go, straight away on mute. There you go, that's the thing. That's a great start. But hi everyone. So it's great to be introduced like that. How wonderful to hear ourselves talked about like that. Hey guys. So as I've been said, my name's Deborah, and I'm going to be hosting the event today. And I'm joined by Drew and Simon, and they're going to be helping me to bring all of this stuff to life. So I'm going to quickly share my screen and just talk you through what we're going to be looking at and how this is going to work this afternoon, because we really do need you and your participation, because it's important, because it's actually quite an interactive session. So we need you to be sort of super involved on the chat to help us out. So what's going to happen is, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all meet the characters, because this is all about successful interviewing with confidence. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some scenarios where we're going to see an interview where perhaps things are not quite as good as they should be, and maybe our candidate isn't as confident as he could be. And then we're going to sort of work through that and talk about ways to help you be more prepared, more confident, because confidence comes from a place of feeling safe. If we feel really unsafe, we can't really be who we want to be. We can't really give of ourselves and be the best version of ourselves, which is what we want to do when we are in an interview. Because I guess you guys really care about your career and the career you're going to have moving forward, because it's so important. We spend so much time at work. We want it to be fulfilling, satisfying, give us a sense of purpose. We want it to be giving us opportunities to express ourselves. So it's so important that you turn up to an interview feeling as confident as you possibly can. And that's sort of what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to look at ways to prepare. I'm going to introduce you to a really amazing model called Shine, so that you can literally shine in an interview. And we'll give you some top tips as well on what to do, so that you feel as prepared as you can be. And you know what? Here's the thing. If one of these things today helps you get the job of your dreams, then that'll be more than enough for us, to be fair. We're also going to see what an interview should look like when we do add all of those things in. And then, of course, finally, we are going to have an opportunity to answer all your questions. So please get involved, put stuff in the Q&A, so that at the end we can answer all your questions. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. All right. So participation wise, what we're going to do when we're looking at the scenarios and when we're talking to the characters, your job is to put any feedback or anything that you want me to talk about to them in that chat. So if you're watching a scenario and you want to give a bit of feedback, that's the place to put it. If you've got a question, in the Q&A. And because we're working with actors, it makes it more dynamic, more interesting, and much more fun. All right, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to actually just do a quick poll. So I'm going to launch the poll. It's a very quick question. I'm just interested to see what you think is the most important thing when it comes to an interview. So I've just launched the poll. I'm going to give you a few seconds to have a look and answer that question, and then we can put those up and see what you guys think. So yeah, and I think we've got quite a lot of people joined us, so it's going to take a few seconds, I think, to get all of your thoughts in, and we'll see what you guys think. It's nice to see a few comments in chat already, so that's really great. So we've got about 10 more people to go for it. So yeah, don't think too hard. Go for it. All right, I'm literally going to give you 10 more seconds. All right, 10 more seconds to go for it. So if you haven't contributed, now's a chance. Press those buttons now, and I'm going to end the poll. Let's have a look. Let's just share the results. Okay, so you can see the winner is preparation. Well, after everything I just said, be hardly surprising, really. So the winner was 63% of you felt that you should be armed with good examples of your strengths and achievements. And you're absolutely right. This is the key thing, is that not to wait to be asked a question, but to have some of those up your sleeve already. And we're going to talk more about that as we get through this session. It is, actually, to be honest, the other two things are really important as well, because your first impression is obviously really key, because as it says on here, it is difficult once you've made that to undo it. And for the interviewer themselves, it can be tricky then for them to sort of unravel what their initial thoughts were. So it is really important to get off to a good start. But the thing is, the preparation is one of the key things that helps you get off to a good start in the first place. And then the other thing is how you answer the questions in the interview. Yeah, absolutely. The more that you've got those examples, the more you're able to answer those questions. So actually, truth is, all those three things on that poll are important. But the key thing is, if we're prepared, we're much more likely to achieve the other two as well. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Okay, lovely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to meet the characters. We're going to meet the characters that Drew and Simon are playing. We are still going to call them Drew and Simon, by the way, just to avoid all confusion. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go off camera, and so is Simon. And we're going to first meet Drew, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and the character he's playing. Okay, so it's over to you, Drew.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. So basically, I'm just leaving university in the next couple of months. Obviously, we've stopped going into lectures now. We're coming up to our final, essays and projects and stuff like that. And I've been looking for some jobs. I've applied for, a handful of positions. I'm in up to more than that. Been on a few interviews, done some face-to-face ones, and most of them have been on Teams or Zoom or whatever software they're using. And it's not gone that well. I've not had any successful interviews yet, and the feedback's been that I've lacked evidence for my skills, and I don't have the right attributes for the job. So it's getting a bit disheartening. Sort of stop believing in yourself after a while, and the interviews just haven't gone as well as I thought they were going to, and I don't really know why. I've got an interview coming up today. It's for a graduate management trainee position. So it's a good opportunity. It's for a large car rental company. I think it'd be a really great opportunity for me. I must admit that I'm pretty nervous, and I really don't want to let this opportunity go. But I'm starting to think that I'm just not very good.
Thank you, Drew. So, okay, so you heard a little bit from Drew. Well, now we've got the unique opportunity to actually hear inside the head of someone that's going to be actually interviewing Drew. So Simon is playing the person representing this company that's going to be interviewing Drew today. So I'm going to go off camera again, and it's over to you, Simon, to tell them a bit about how you're approaching all of this.
Hi, I'm Simon, and I'm the HR manager for the UK operation of a large car rental company. And part of my job is overseeing our management trainee graduate scheme. If you've been selected for an interview, then you meet the entrance requirements. So the interview is about finding out what type of human that you are and whether you fit within our company culture, if you've got that kind of passion and the drive, to want to be part of, what we think is a really compelling vision. I've had a fair amount of experience in interviewing, and I've also attended a lot of training courses over the years, but I'll be honest, it's quite hard not to make judgments on first impressions. So if you're going to come and be interviewed by me, make it easier by doing some homework and being prepared. Obviously, I'll forgive you if you're a bit nervous, and I'll do my best to make you feel a bit more comfortable. But I do find it hard to get past someone that doesn't seem to care, or maybe hasn't thought through why they're right for the position. So what am I looking for? I am looking for somebody who basically can make a connection, who's a good communicator, somebody who can build relationships naturally and will really be an active and contributing member of the team. This will kind of come out in the interview itself and by examples that you might give me, because I'll quickly work out if you're blagging or exaggerating in an interview. What I need is real life evidence, examples that can back up what you say, but we'll come to that a bit later.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Simon. So that's quite unique to get that sort of insight from someone that does interviews. So you can see straight away, first of all, how prepared Simon is. So Simon's done his preparation. He's thinking about what is he looking for. He's thinking about how he might draw that out of the person coming for the interview. He's put some time into this. The other thing I think is quite interesting about what you said is he will forgive you being nervous, because I know the thing about interviews is they're one of those things that make us very nervous. It's a bit like when we take our driving test, the same sort of feelings that we get, or we're going to do a big presentation. We get the same sort of feelings when we're sort of going to approach those sorts of things. We get quite anxious, but actually Simon said he would forgive that, and he'll do his best to make you feel comfortable. So the key things he's looking for, as he kept saying, was evidence to prove that you are the right person for the job. For me, I always think what you've got to do is think about your job being to make it really easy for the interviewer to know that you're the right candidate. Okay. And again, I'm just going to share my screen just a second before we see the actual first interview. And I wanted to show you this, because this is actually what happens to us when we are nervous. We actually can have a reaction called fight or flight or freeze. And if any of you are doing psychology or anything like that, you would have come across this. And you don't have to read all of this. This is the science stuff. But what it means is when we are nervous, what happens is we start to produce hormones, quite a lot of them actually, into the bloodstream, which actually can, if we're not careful, we don't manage it, and we're not feeling like we have done our preparation, it can actually stop us thinking, because of course everything is going towards either getting out of there or standing and fighting, because our brain does not know the difference between an interview and a real threat. It's hairy mammoth across the field charging at us. We're not going to do a spreadsheet on what to do. We're either going to run or we're going to fight. And an interview is sort of a version of the scary mammoth, if you like. So that's one thing to think about. So the more prepared you are, the more likely you are to be able to breathe your way through this. The other thing I would say is, actually, if we harness this, it can be really good, because it helps us to think on our feet. It helps us to really step up our game. So if we're in the right place, it can be a really useful thing and not a negative thing. Okay. And as we said, right at the top of the iceberg there is the interview. All of the really important stuff is underneath it all, so that when you arrive, you're actually ready, or if you go on Zoom or whatever. Right then, so what we're going to do now is we're going to see a first stab at this interview. So Drew's been telling you all about what, that he's nervous. He's been on a few interviews. He feels like he's almost defeated in a way. So you guys are going to get a chance to see this. What I want you to do is, while you're watching it, is to put anything in the chat box in terms of feedback for Drew. Because at the end of the scenario, I'm going to sort of cut it at some point. I'm going to look at the chat box and give Drew your feedback. So anything that you think might help him, anything you think he's doing well or not so well, throw it in the chat box and then we can have a look at it afterwards. Right, so I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to invite both of our actors to come back on and you're going to see the interview. Here we go.
Oh gosh. Sorry, hi Simon. How are you? Sorry, the Zoom had to update as I've just tried to go online, so it's a nightmare. Sorry about that.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. That's not that's just typical. As I went to log in, it decided that it wasn't going to work. So yeah, sorry. Oh God, I just realised I've got to change my name. Sorry about that. I was on a family Zoom last night and I just missed I'm sorry.
Okay. This is something flashing in the background.
Oh, sorry. That's my lights. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. Hi. Now we can start. Sorry again. Yeah.
Okay. So right. Let's just kind of dive straight in. I'm going to ask you some questions about the key skills that we're looking for from this program, and yeah, if you could give us some examples about from your previous experience, or maybe things you've done at university, or any other kind of experience you might have that would be relevant. If you could be as specific as possible and tell me about the results. So to kick off, right, first question, let's look at how you work in a team, first of all. So can you give me an example where you have successfully contributed to the success of a team?
Yeah, well, I obviously did a lot of work at university in a team. We had some projects that we had to complete together, and that was part of our final grade. So, and I did really well in that.
Okay, all right, thanks. So I'm moving on to influencing skills. Can you tell me a time when you had to sell an idea or inspire somebody to work with you? How did you go about it?
Do you mean in a job or at university?
Either is good.
Actually, I think I set up a local football team for my village, and that was something that had a lot of work had to go into that to make that happen.
Okay, that's a great example. Can you tell me what you had to do?
Yeah, I had to organise it. Had to organise it all, persuade people to take part, which was a real challenge. But yeah, it was great, and everything paid off in the end.
Okay. Can you tell me a bit more about how you cope under pressure then? Maybe with a football team or possibly another example?
I mean, the main challenge with, as I said, was the persuading people to come, and then making sure people turn up every week. Yeah, I mean, I made it work in the end, but we had a bit of help from another coach and stuff like that. So,
okay. So what did you actually do?
I mean, I set up the WhatsApp group, and we communicated with everyone, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you got an example of how you kind of coped with pressure?
I mean, obviously, being at university has its pressures. I mean, if that's any help at all.
Okay, so moving on, this job needs somebody who is very self-motivated, able to use their initiative. So again, can you tell me when you've had to do that?
Well, I'm going to jump in and step in here because we've got so much comments and so much advice for you, Drew. We really need to have a look at this. And I sort of get the feeling that things aren't going so well anyway. Simon, what are your thoughts on Drew so far?
Well, I'm not sure he's got kind of potential as a leader. I mean, the first impression is quite hard to get over. He seems a bit vague, to be honest, and a bit unprepared. So I'm not really convinced that that he really wants the job. And his background was distracting, which obviously didn't help very much. I mean, I wouldn't say that he's completely blown it, but he really needs to kind of pull it out of the bag now with some specific good examples of what I'm looking for. And I know this sometimes can be hard, but I need evidence. Otherwise, I can't really make an informed decision. And he hasn't really given any details. I mean, I need to know what he actually did, what the impact of that was, what he learned, that kind of thing. At the moment, it feels quite like hard work, because that's kind of you're drawing blood from a stone a bit.
Yeah, it looked like that. And if we have a look, we'll come back to you in a second, Drew, and ask you how you felt. But if we have a look at some of the chat, I mean, first of all, everybody really noticing the first impression, the fact that you seemed really unorganized, Drew, and you had the wrong name up, and then you had a flashing light, and the actual interviewer had to even talk to you about changing that. I mean, what was going on there? What happened there, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, as I tried to go on Zoom, I had a 15-minute bar to download, and I just got completely flustered by it. I'm not sure what else I can say, really. It just completely threw me, and then by the time I got on, I hadn't had time to think about any of that or sort out my surroundings. I just a bit of panic set in, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that they felt like what somebody actually even put here, that you're a bit unstable. And I think it's sort of, you probably felt a bit like that, didn't you? You felt a bit like unstable, not in your skin, not present in the moment, if you like.
Yeah, it's weird because now it's sort of stopped, and I've got all the answers that I wanted to give him coming to my front of my mind now, and I just I completely got stuck. It's like a rabbit in the headlights. That's what I felt like, to be honest.
Yeah, there is some stuff around that. I mean, Debbie here says apologizing once is enough. So if these sorts of things happen to you, these things can happen. I mean, first of all, I would say if you're going to an interview and you were traveling, you would always check how long it's going to take you and make sure that you knew how to get there. It's the same if it's virtual. Don't leave it till 10 minutes before the interview to check. Drew, what you should have done is gone on way earlier and made sure that everything was working and that you looked good and your background was right. It depends. I mean, how important is it to you to get a good job?
Yeah, it's vital. I feel like I've done some good stuff to get ahead of myself trying to get a job. But if I don't, if it doesn't happen soon, it's gonna become a problem.
Yeah, and you'd made all this great work to actually get the opportunity in the first place. It was a shame. But you know what? A lot of people sort of saying that perhaps these things happen, but maybe you could have just, recovered quicker, I think is what they're saying. And then just getting into some of the questions, some people saying that you didn't give enough specifics when he asked you the question, came up with quite a good idea, quite a good example, the football club, but not give enough information. Well, I have to say, Simon, some of them having a little go at you as well, saying that you could have helped him a little bit and given, pulled a bit more out of him. Well, how do you feel about that?
Well, I guess that's fair. I mean, possibly, I guess I slightly had the hump because I was kind of a bit off put by the kind of start in terms of the kind of disorganization and the screen and stuff. So that might have colored the way I actually reacted to him. I'm generally kind of pretty relaxed, but I think this time I got slightly frustrated. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's fair enough, isn't it? That obviously this is not a course on training the interviewer, but actually we do training for interviews, and we always say to them it's about making it feel as safe as possible to motivate the other person. But if you get off to a terrible start like that, then it could throw things. It could throw things. But yeah, it did feel a little bit interrogative. I admit that. But here's some good advice. Drew needs to be more prepared. Simon could have been more welcoming. Okay. No introduction from Simon either. Well, that's true. And how long the interview is going to be. Maybe it would have given you a chance to relax, perhaps, Drew. Needs to get into more specifics, just a quick flick through. And yeah, I think a lot of people saying really that could have been a better first impression and you could have been more prepared. That was the really the key things that we need to look at here. So we'll come back to Drew in a minute and we'll see Simon a little bit later, but let's have a look at some of the key things that perhaps might have helped, despite maybe it being quite a difficult interview anyway. So I'm going to ask Drew and Simon to just go off camera for a minute, and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to have a look at some information that might really help with all of this. So the first thing, of course, is that we did talk about how Drew could have perhaps sorted out the tech stuff and all those things first. But despite all of that, here's some of the things that you might want to think about in terms of, you know, getting yourself ready for an interview. So the first thing is to look really carefully at the advert in the first place. What are they looking for? Most adverts for jobs will be actually telling you what skills they need, what qualities they'd be looking for. So that's the first place to start with, is to start looking at those and thinking about how you might be able to match up with that. How can you deliver that? Remember what I said, the easier we make it for the interviewer to make their decision, the better. Okay, because that's what they're doing. They have a criteria. Most interviews these days are done, they're called behavioral interviews, or they're called criteria-based interviews, and they are about looking for qualities and attributes, the human stuff actually more than anything, that mean that that person will be the right person for the role. And they're looking for evidence. Now, you might not have much experience in terms of the workplace, but you will have a lot of things that you can really think about in terms of your life experience that could be really useful. The other thing is to actually practice saying the words. You know, we have actors in this session, and actors don't do theatre work or film work without a lot of rehearsal. So, you know, it's different. An interview is different, obviously. You want to be yourself, you want it to be natural, but it's a really good idea just to practice saying some of the key things. So, you know, get your friends and family to ask you some of the key questions that you think you might get, and practice answering them. And that will help a lot. It will help to build your confidence. The other thing that's really good is to get under the skin of it a bit more. So you probably know all this, but have a look at the company website. Not just that, maybe go on their LinkedIn page or their Instagram page and have a look what they're putting out there. What's their latest news? What are their values? What's important to them? So you can get a real feel for this particular business or this particular organization that you're looking to work with. The more you do that, the more you can tailor your answers to deliver on that. Also, of course, if they ask you that question, what do you know about our company and what do you know about this organization, you're able to give them a bit more than the sort of spiel off the website. You can actually give them something that maybe is in the news right now that you've seen. All of these things are going to really show that you care, because that's the key thing, to show that you care enough to have done your research. Most people are looking for candidates. There's nothing more compelling actually than a candidate that really wants to work for you. It's a really strong, powerful message. The other thing is to think about you. So I know, you know, in our British culture and a lot of cultures all over the world, actually, we find it difficult to brag about ourselves. We find it difficult to talk about the good things, but actually in an interview, you know, this is your chance to shine. It's your chance to really impress someone and to make sure that they really understand how good you are. So it's okay to really think about the qualities, attributes, skills, experiences, and things that you've done that you can really shout about and brag about. You're allowed to do that. But think about it in advance so that you're not caught out. Okay, so here are the key things that you need to think about in terms of yourself. Okay, and I would, say to you, you can, jot this down in a journal. You can maybe make some notes on your computer, whatever works for you. But if you actually write them down, you're much more likely to remember them. Something about the writing of them down or the typing of them up that actually sticks, rather than just the thinking. Plus the fact, it's something that you can have a look at before you go on the interview. You can have a quick read through. You can, if you're on Zoom or Teams, you've always got it in front of you. If you're going to an interview, maybe you have a look at them on the way on the train or the tube or however you're getting there. It's a good way to remind yourself. And here's some of the key things. So what are your skills and aptitudes? And really think outside of the box. What do you bring to the table? Maybe, are you good at timekeeping? Are you really good at organization? Are you very good at bringing people with you? Do you have a lot of enthusiasm? Really think about those types of things and your strengths. What are your gifts that you will bring to this workplace? And again, if you link that with some of the stuff that you might have found out about the company, all the better. And then what have you done? What have you achieved? What have you done? And, Drew was talking about this football team that he's created or that he started. That's a big deal to create something from scratch. But he just dismissed it as if it wasn't very important. So we really need to be bigging up these achievements. And then finally, you might think, well, this is an odd one. Do I really want to be telling them about areas to improve? Well, the thing is, you're coming to this interview with skills, attributes, achievements, but you're still going to be coming into it fairly green. You're still going to have a lot to learn. And one of the things that interviewers like is to know how self-aware you are. Are you a self-directed learner? Are you the sort of person that will actually really run with this and find ways to improve yourself? And also, are you going to be the sort of person that will put yourself forward for improvement? Again, one of the really key skills of the future, and I talk about this a lot in my book, Stand Out. One of the key skills of the future is going to be people that are willing to teach, learn, and develop themselves. It's also one of the key things that most people looking for a job are looking for too. They want to be developed. They want to be trained. They want personal development more than ever before. People are looking for that. So it's absolutely fine for you to talk about what you want to get out of this opportunity as well. Remember, interviews are definitely a two-way thing. I think, some of the chat that some of you said about the fact that actually it's just as much the responsibility of the interviewer to make it a good experience. It's true. And, you've got every right to expect that. And it's just as important to you to make sure you get the right fit as it is for them to make sure they get the right fit. So it's fine to talk about what you want to improve on. It's fine to ask about opportunities. And then, just very quickly, just some of the things that you might want to think about, just to get you started. Here are some of the classic, and I can tell you this because, like I said, we do interview training. So here are some of the classic things that they might have on their criteria. These are some of the things that they're going to be looking for. So they might very well ask you to tell them a time when you were a good team member, or where you showed leadership skills, or perhaps you had to deal with challenge and be assertive. All of these are the key things that they're going to be looking for evidence for. And like I said, they don't necessarily have to be in a job. They could be in your experience at university, or your hobbies, or other experiences you've had. But make sure you've got evidence to prove that you have these attributes. And of course, you can add to these based on your research on the job and what they're looking for, and the type of company they might be, and the role. What do you think the role will need? And then achievements, again, some examples of where you might draw from, because sometimes it can be quite daunting to sit there and go, right, okay, where can I find this evidence? How can I well, I haven't done much. I'm in my early 20s. What have I got that I can put forward? But there's so many different areas you can pull from. You can pull from your university, your school, your college, the qualifications that you've had to get, any professional or technical qualifications you've had to work towards, difficulties that you've had to overcome. I mean, you don't have to get really personal, but all of us have had challenges, and more recently than it is COVID. How did you deal with that? How did you cope with the whole COVID thing? It could be anything that where you can prove that you've had to overcome challenges. And if you've ever had to learn a new skill, have you learned a language? Have you learned an instrument? Did you learn to play a new sport? These are all great sources of collateral that you can use in your interview. But the key thing is, I can't keep stressing this enough, is don't leave this until you're asked the question, because in that fight and flight place, you might not be able to think of the answers off the top of your head. You might go into a slight panic. That's what Drew did. He went into a complete panic place. Didn't help that he got off to a bad start. So think about these in advance, practice answering some of these questions and talking about some of these things with family, friends, anyone actually that will, could act as an interviewer for you. Just test the water, okay? So those are the key things. Those are the key things that I would say are most important to think about prior to your interview. But I'm going to bring Drew back now. Drew, do you want to just come back on?
Hello.
Hi there, Drew. So how are you feeling now after that fairly traumatic experience that you had?
I don't really know what to think now. I know I'm disappointed in myself for not being prepared enough, not giving enough time at the beginning. And then now, like I said earlier, I've got all these answers I wish I'd said and coming through to the top of my head. And yeah, sort of disappointed in myself, I guess.
Yeah, so you're very much in that fight flight place. And just, just from what I've been saying, if looking at what I've been saying, did any of that resonate with you? Did you think, oh God, I could have done that and I could have maybe had more evidence up my sleeve?
Yeah, definitely. I think if I'd have written some stuff down and maybe practiced what I was going to say, then I would have been more comfortable with the answers I was giving.
Yeah.
But I guess the annoying thing is I know all that information and I just couldn't in the moment in the the blind panic I was in, I just couldn't get it out. So
yeah. Okay, Drew. Well, we're going to help you. So I'm going to show you a really good model. I mean, despite everything else I've said, obviously all the preparation, what we're going to talk about now is how you now express that in the interview itself. Because some of the people were saying that perhaps you could have given more detail or you could have brought your example to life more. Yeah. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you something. And I'm going to show all our lovely students out there as well, something that they might want to use in their interviews. Okay. So let me go back to my screen and I'll show it to you. So this is the SHINE model. And some of you might have come across the STAR model, but this is sort of my take on it with a little bit of an extra twist. I always like to take these things and add a little bit of an extra twist. So the first thing is, tell the story. Let's bring it to life. It's not enough to just say, well, I started a football club and I had a few challenges and it all ended up great in the end. Simon wants more. He wants to know, what the challenges were, how you overcame them, what happened. So we need to tell the story and how you were personally involved in that. What did you actually do? And you can see that the impact is really important. What impact did you actually have? Because, of course, that's the evidence, isn't it? The evidence is what you did and the impact you had. And then finally, what was the result and what did you learn from that? Because, again, that is showing that, we all make mistakes. We all have challenges and things don't always go perfectly well. But actually, that's even better evidence in a way for an interviewer, that you are able to make mistakes, learn from them, pick yourself up and do a better job. That's what they're looking for. And then the added bit, of course, is to have that energy, enthusiasm and to engage with your interviewer so that, it comes to life for them so they can see how interested you are. What do you think of that, Drew?
Yeah, I think it's going to help, especially with this. So we've used the football club as an example for it. I think it's going to really help. Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to have a little practice?
Okay. Yeah.
Right, so we're going to assume then, what we're going to do is we're going to assume that you've been asked that question again, which is, when have you had to sort of deal with any sort of challenge or use your initiative? Why don't you use the SHINE model, okay, to
Okay.
answer that question? Let's have a little look at it. I'll stay on screen because I'm here to support you. By the way, while he's doing this, in the chat box, guys, what do you think of this? So this is going to be his first go at using the SHINE model. So I'm really interested in what you think. Is it good enough? Is there anything else he could do to make it better? And I'm sure Drew would appreciate any positive reinforcement right now.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please.
So come on, Andrew. Let's give this a go. Give it a go.
Okay. So story first. So I was involved in creating a village football team. It was something that was lacking. There was a lot of interest in the area, so I teamed up with a local coach who also agreed with me and felt there's a real need for it. I made flyers. We put them around the village, and then we organised meetups to get things going. We had a really great response. Over 30 young people, male and female, of all different ages, turned up, and it was looking really good to get a squad sorted. It wasn't easy. In the end, we had to chase a lot. I set up a WhatsApp group to keep a check on things, sort of keep everyone organised, and we managed to get things going. But unfortunately, we didn't win the league. But we did get the team going, and I learned a lot, and it's still going now, so it worked.
Well, I must say, Drew, that was much, much better. What does everybody else think? So a few people put some stuff in the chat. What did you think? There's a really nice one here, Drew. Relax a bit. You're so much better than you realise.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, that's from Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Yeah, she's giving you.
Appreciate that.
She's definitely on your side. We've got that you sound focused from Julie. Elizabeth also saying, as you discussed your personal experience, your outcomes, your enthusiasm, lean into that. Excellent, she says. Well done, Drew. You did really well. Much better, much more positive. It's more engaging. Yeah, I think it was so much better. But you know what, Drew? I think you can go a little bit further.
Okay.
Now you've had one go at this. I think you can really bring this to life, I'm
going to listen to Elizabeth. I think I'm going to take that advice,
Yeah.
Use my personality and my passion for this, because it's something I am passionate about. So that should come through what I'm saying. Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, let's give it one more go. Again, everybody, listen. Any feedback in the chat box, please? Let's see how he gets on with it this time. Okay, off you go, Drew.
Okay, yeah. So I was involved in creating a village football team in the village that I grew up in. So I knew there was like a real need for something for young people to get involved with, to be active, and I personally have always wanted to be part of a football team rather than just a player, as part of the organisation of that team, and it's a real passion of mine. So, I decided to see if it was something that we could get going, that people in the village would be into and might get excited about. So I teamed up with a local coach who I've known for a good few years. He's lived in the village basically as long as I have. He was really passionate about getting the young people to play in sport. And we just both thought it could be amazing to have a mixed gender team playing the local league. So, I created a flyer, we put it up all over the village, into the shops, into the newspaper shop, the pubs, everything, everywhere, trying to persuade people to put the flyer up. And it took all my power of persuasion to tell how much it would benefit the community, and it worked. We had some amazing responses, and we got over 30 young male and female players to turn up, and me and the coach, we presented our vision for the team and why we felt it was so important. I did have to overcome some objections from some of the guys around it being a mixed team. This is something that people weren't used to, and I was prepared for that. Used some examples of other teams where it had really worked and the benefit it has brought, and we got 30 people signed up that night. So some real energy, real excitement involved in what we were doing. I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. I had to keep chasing. I had to keep things going. Obviously, there's a monetary thing involved in this, and I had to get payment for pitches and stuff like that. We set up WhatsApp groups. We set up Facebook groups. We had to keep everyone connected, which that's something that can really help and get people involved. It also gave people a bit of power for their own involvement. The whole thing was, it was a challenge, but I've learned a lot from it. It's something that I am very proud of. And if you really want something and you believe in it, you've got to stick with it. So that was something that I was proud of as well. And we put the energy and we stuck to our guns. If we'd have folded when we had the challenges, then we'd never be here today. So sticking to your guns was really important. And I think it was just great to be part of the communication with the village. And I think that's where I learned the most, really, was in the communication, in the chasing. So.
Wow. Honestly, I think if you'd have spoken like that in that interview, you would have got the job, Drew. Well, you certainly would have been much more likely to have been considered. And some of the feedback, you want to hear some of this feedback. So
yes,
much
please.
better. Sorry?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So much better. Lots of information, very natural, lots of enthusiasm. We've got passionate, determined, teamed with a local coach, mixed gender, great networking. Wow, really great stuff. People really engaged in your story. Really good. You show that you can listen to other team members and work with a wider group of people. Sounds really confident, showing how you overcame the challenges. Elizabeth says, nice. Very simple, to the point. She's pleased with you. And then the teamwork. So, yeah, see how much more engaging a story is. So this is the thing. It's not, you can use the SHINE model in quite a sort of quite factual way, but let's bring it to life. And, poor old Drew had to do that in a one-dimensional way to you guys, the audience. I mean, in a real interview, you would find that perhaps the interviewer would be asking some extra questions and acknowledging and joining in with that enthusiasm. But that was such a big example, and it was so much better this time. So this is the way to shine. Do your prep, get ready, and then bring it to life by telling your story. Bring it to life by telling your story. We're so much more involved and invested in those stories. So I'm going to let you have a little rest, Drew. I'm going to bring Simon back.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the advice and feedback. And thanks, Deb, for coaching me through SHINE. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, don't go away because you're going to come back and have another go at that interview.
No, I'm still here. Don't you worry.
All right, then. Okay.
I'm not going to risk Zoom updating again. So.
All right, yeah, you stay on. Right, Simon.
Again.
Hi. So tell us, because we're just going to talk a little bit about the end of these interviews. What's your pet hate when it comes to the end of an interview? Anything you don't like from candidates?
My pet hate. Actually, there is one thing. It drives me mad when they don't have any questions, because to me it says you haven't got much interest if you don't ask anything, and there's got to be something that you kind of want to know about the company and what you're applying for. And I think it's also good to use that to maybe show how much you want the opportunity. And it could be something that actually, particularly because it's the last thing that you have, last memory you have of somebody, it could be the difference between you and the next candidate.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We could put a lot of energy into the beginning and forget that we also need to have some questions at the end. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to just share with the audience some killer questions that they might want to think about in terms of having up their sleeve for the end of the interview. And then Simon, do you mind coming back and giving Drew one more chance?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll be back to you very shortly. All right. So the ends of interviews, it's like get off to a good start and end on a high. So actually you can really sort of, set your stall out by the types of questions you might want to ask at the end of an interview. So here's some killer questions for you that you might want to try. So this is the classic, actually, which is, after meeting with me today, do you have any reservations about me being the right fit for this role? Now, you might think, whoa, that's quite a brave question. But you know what? First of all, it impresses the interviewer that you care enough to be courageous and ask this question. It also makes them think you really want the job. And it also, of course, gives you a final chance, because if they do have some reservations, then you can actually deal with those in the interview. Now, if you don't feel comfortable using that one, fine, but that's a really good killer question. Here's the next one. If I was successful, how would you see me contributing to this business, team, or role? The reason this one is good is it's assuming that you're going to get the job. And what is really good about it is it gets the interviewer to start painting a picture of how they might see you in the role. So already in their mind, they're starting to think about that. Okay. And then the final killer, there's a few, you might have your own really good ones. Okay. But the third one is, how would you see the successful candidate progressing in this role? So you know what I said to you earlier on about how important it is to be a self-directed learner? This is one that's going, I'm all in. I'm all in. I'm not perfect. I've got a lot to learn and I'm willing to learn it. And I'm starting right now in this interview. To be honest, you could ask all three of these, actually, but you need to, and there are other ones that you might want to ask, but you need to ask something other than the sort of standard thing, because the truth is that a lot of the questions that you'll have about the actual job will probably be answered in the interview. This needs to be an opportunity to take it out a little bit further. Some of you put it in the chat box, actually. So Joe says the first question is definitely something for me. My personality going forward. Yeah, you know what? It's not pushy. I think we often think it's a bit pushy, but actually it's not. It's just showing how much you care. It's showing confidence. Okay. So I can tell you, whenever, when I was in the job market, it's been a long time now, I always used to ask that question, so try it. Okay. Stop sharing. Right. We're going to bring Simon and Drew back for their final go. So Drew is now prepped. His tech's good. He's got a great background. He looks smart. Yeah, he's been practicing, done a little bit of work with me. I've coached him. By the way, you just have to imagine that this is just part of the interview. We're not going to see the whole thing. We're just going to see a little bit of it. We're going to see Drew using Shine again and just ending the interview, because obviously we have not got time right now to show you a whole interview. So just bear that in mind. And I'm going to go off camera and leave you guys to it. And again, in the chat box, please, one last chance, okay, for you to give some feedback to Drew and see how he does. So in the chat box, please. Okay.
Okay, so Drew, can you tell me about a time when you had to overcome a challenge to get something that you wanted or have an idea to be taken up?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so I was involved in a charity a few years ago called Schools for Schools. It was based in the Gambia in Africa, which is the smallest country in Africa. My mum was a trustee. She was one of the founders, and we'd set up some volunteer lodges. So we were looking for young people to come and volunteer for roughly like 6 weeks of the holidays, or any amount of time they could give up, helping with the schools, any of the younger children. Yeah, and that was something I feel really passionate about, something I was brought up with. So I decided to do a presentation to some of the students in my class. I thought that would be a great thing to do because I wanted to give them a chance to do what I had done. And I'd spoken to a few of them. There was a bit of interest. That it seemed to be a bit of excitement behind it. I had to get permission to set up the presentation from the school. That was difficult. I had to sort of find the right person to talk to, to allow me to have a space within the school time. I did some investigation and I had to meet with one of our course leaders to get them on board. I'm lucky to say they were really impressed. They got right behind the idea, and they were actually a big part of me getting to be able to present this to the school and my classmates. Yeah, I mean, in the end, we had well over 20 students who wanted to go, and it was amazing. To be honest, I felt so good that I could give an opportunity for them to see what I saw, and I just felt great about it. And the charity obviously would have been really helped by all this new energy, and the students could get their life-changing experiences like I could when I went. It's just something I learned a whole lot from. I got a load of experience from it. It was obviously that warm, fuzzy feeling as well that you get. But yeah, it was about being persistent, not giving up, and communicating my vision, which is something that when you're passionate about, I felt it was easy.
Okay, that's great. It sounds like an amazing achievement. I'm impressed. It's the kind of energy that we're looking for. So that's kind of like more or less the end. Thank you for your time today. I mean, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering where would you see a successful student on this program progressing? Within the organisation in the future. What's the sort of place we can go to?
Okay, that's a really good question. I mean, I would say there aren't any limits. I mean, if you've got the talent, there's no reason why you couldn't go right to the top if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in this program, and I think it fits my skills and my values. But is there anything else that I can say to reassure you that I'm the right fit?
Well, thanks for asking that. I'd say you've given a very good interview, and it's now for me to consider you along with other successful candidates, and we'll get back to you very soon. I would think at the latest by the end of next week.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Simon.
Yeah, it just goes to show what a little bit of coaching can do, Drew. How do you feel?
I feel good about that. Yeah, I think I might have just had a successful interview for the first time since leaving university. So that's a good thing.
Do you know what? Even if you don't get the job, you will have done a lot of really good work in terms of building your confidence and being ready for the next one. And a lot of this is a physical thing. An interview is a physical thing. It needs practice. You need to keep developing it. And I would say, even if you don't get it, you may very well get it, but even if you don't, just see it as a really positive step forward. And the other thing, is to ask for feedback, is to get feedback about the interview so that you can learn and grow and get even better. But Simon, what did you think? Yeah,
I mean, I kind of, I mean, just in terms of the way I kind of felt, if I felt more engaged, I thought engaged in the story, in Drew's kind of passion, what he was doing. He kind of really cared about what he was doing, and the examples that he gave, sounded credible and exciting, and showed the kind of the attitude that we're looking for.
Absolutely. And looking at some of the comments in the chat box about how you did, Drew, lots more positive stuff around you being more confident and engaged. And yeah, we noticed that Simon had a little smile. Did you notice that, Drew, while you were telling?
I did. Yeah, I did.
See, he's not giving away much, but that little smile, you've got to read. It's so much harder doing this virtually than it is face to face, because obviously there's so much less for us to see. But take your cues. If you see someone smiling, see that, or they ask you a question, or they give you some encouragement, just see that as reinforcement for you that you're doing a great job. And we've got this around Julie saying here how much she liked the story, and how she liked the fact that it was passionate and involving your family in it. Yeah, really nice when you sort of talked about that. You really came to life, Drew. We've got lots of confidence, yeah. And Simon didn't have to pull teeth this time. How do you feel about that, Simon?
Yeah, not a dentist.
Well, here's the thing, Simon should be prepared to pull a little bit, because obviously it's his job to pull out the best in the interviewee, but you have as much responsibility to make his job easy. So the more prepared you are, the more that you put into this, the more that you practice, the more you think about it in advance, the easier it's going to be for both of you, And, you know, you might even find that you start to enjoy these interviews. And that's really what we want. Both parties coming away going, I really enjoyed that. It was really fun. I really enjoyed hearing the stories, and I really enjoyed telling the stories. But anyway, have we got any questions? Let's have a look. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, we do.
We
Well,
have
that
some
was amazing.
questions. Right. Well, we'll stay on, see if there's anything we can do to help all those lovely students out there.
That would be amazing. So we've got a couple questions in here, plus a few that were pre-submitted. So I'll start with one that's been sent in just now. So this person has said, I'm nervous about interviewing while pregnant and being discriminated against. How do you think I should bring this up and show that I'm still able to make a difference and be a good team worker whilst being honest about the difficulties of pregnancy and becoming a mom? Just thinking about it makes me nervous.
Wow. Well, yeah, and that's a big question. I mean, first of all, it saddens me in a way to think that you're feeling that way, because you shouldn't have to. You absolutely shouldn't have to feel that way. You know what? I think focus on all the things we've talked about today. I would, you know, be completely transparent and honest. Go in there with that feeling, actually, that you have every right to be still looking for employment. You've got a lot to offer, you know, and honestly, if you have any sort of feeling of being discriminated against, then there's lots of things that you can do. You can actually report it. You can even take it to a tribunal if you want. But if you make sure that you're really prepared, you have all of the evidence, and you feel like you've given all of the, you know, you've really met the criteria, and you don't get the job and you don't get feedback, I would be taking it further, honestly. But I would say, you know, go in there feeling as confident as you can about what you can offer. I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that, Drew or Simon.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that you can only control what you can control
Yeah.
with that sort of situation, and that's not an excuse for the discrimination that might be out. I mean, obviously, as a white man, it's not something I've ever had to deal with myself. But yeah, you can only control what you control, and if you're the best you can be, like Deb says, then you have every right to take that beyond where, you know, just a no. And if you believe that there's something going on, then yeah, fight your corner. But as long as you're doing this stuff, you're really showing yourself to shine the best you can. I'd like to hope that, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be considered as the best candidate if you are the best candidate.
Yeah, so I'm the same here. Simon, you got anything to add?
Well, apart from that kind of same caveat that Drew said about, you know, being a white bloke and in terms of actually not having to go through all that kind of stuff, I think I mean, I don't know whether there is something in terms of the diversity and inclusivity agenda in relation to the idea that, you know, the more experience that we have of life, the different experience that we have, the evidence is overwhelming that it helps build teams in different ways. So maybe again, this is too simplistic, but it seems to me that one could say, if you do want to deal with it, to be able to kind of go, you know, and actually I've learned so much more actually by being, I must say, as I say this, I'm really kind of cringy, but you know, the idea that you're learning stuff and you can contribute more because of it, and actually it's a kind of real positive, and that's something that you can build in terms of that the D&I agenda to the team that you're applying for.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. So there's another one here, which is, I guess, a little bit more, it's just an in-depth question of something you covered, but is it good to ask about seeing yourself in 5 or 10 years time, I guess, within the company?
Sorry, just say that again. I just got distracted. I just saw something in the chat and I missed the question. So sorry.
No worries. It's just asking, is it good to ask about seeing yourself in 5 or 10 years time within the company?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you know, in terms of asking them how you see yourself, yeah, absolutely. Where it's absolutely a good idea to say to them, you know, how will I progress and where might I be in 5 years' time? Chances are they're going to ask you that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So, you know, both parties want to know how you're going to progress and how you're going to move forward. I would say that in my experience right now, in terms of the future of work, 5 years is a long time to be with any company. Most people are thinking that particularly when you're younger in your early career, that you will move much sooner than that. So I would also be asking them about, you've got every right. How are you going to develop me as a person? How are you going to help me to progress in my career? I mean, even if I'm not here 10 years, 5 years, because that the truth is most people won't be now. And, hopefully you'll have a choice of where you go to work, and you choose the ones that are most likely to develop you. Any other thoughts on that one, Simon and Drew?
I would just add, because it's the perfect opportunity to push Stand Out and mention that book, that, all this stuff about the future of work is in Deb's book, about, how it's going to look in 5-10 years time, and everything that Deb's just mentioned there about how, this becoming a more focus on a skill and then moving around different businesses is going to become more and more appropriate for how we work. And I think even if you're interested and showing engagement into that future of work, that's going to be all help towards you being a shining interviewing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Actually, the future looks, in terms of career, looks really exciting for people, in terms of what might be the opportunities. I'm a positive person. I like to look on the bright side. And for me, I see a very bright future anyway. But Simon, anything else to add?
We're just kind of building on that, I guess, a bit, which is the idea of the fact that things are so uncertain, and the ability to be able to adapt and change and flex is really key. So, I mean, as long as you are confident about that part of your characteristics and your ability to do that, you could kind of say, this is what I've experienced in my own life already. It's probably going to get even faster, more changing. But just to give an example of how I've adapted. So again, you're kind of using that question to be able to show that you've actually already got that particular skill and capability.
Cool.
Just before I ask the next question, I just want to mention again, this video is being live streamed to YouTube. So everyone that's attended today will get a link to the video over the next couple of days. So I noticed a couple of people asking in the chat. So in case you've missed that, you will be getting a video. Don't worry if you've missed anything.
That's what I got distracted by, the one somebody asking.
I realized I also saw the long message. So yeah, no, don't worry. You will be getting a link. So if any of you missed something or came in late or had to leave early, no worries. You will be getting a link.
Cool.
So here's another question, which is, how can I incorporate mentioning other strengths or areas in an interview when a lot of the questions asked by the interviewer would be based around my CV?
Oh, great question. First of all, what on earth are interviewers doing when they're just using a CV? Talk about old-fashioned. They definitely need to go on a training course on how to interview. But the thing is, we can't control them, as we've already said. We can only respond. So again, when they're using the CV, just look for opportunities to tell your stories. Because even in the CV, they'll be saying, how did you do this and when did you do that? You can still use that as an opportunity. And, the other thing you can do is take initiative. Say, I'd really like to, I really want this position. I'm really, really keen. I just want to tell you about a couple of things that I think, from based on my research, I think might be really useful to you. So, I know it's difficult when it feels like you're on the back foot, because in a way there's this perception in an interview that the interviewer is in charge and the boss and the scary person. And sometimes you can even be in a panel, in front of a panel. But you have every right to sell yourself, to ask those questions, push yourself forward. And I would say, do that. You only get, who dares wins. You only get that one chance. And again, just the way that you're acting in the interview is massive evidence on how you might be in a business. Any other thoughts, Simon?
No.
No, said it all.
I would just add that you can make your CV shine as well. This stuff works this stuff works in written form. And if you want to make your CV example shine, do it. If that's something you're worried about, go for it. And there's nothing that suggests that you have to do the generic CV. You can put a picture of yourself that's a bit different. You can do something a bit more creative with it. There's nothing stopping you doing that. That's all I would add.
That's a great point, Drew. I sort of feel like there might be a new book appearing called Shine. But anyway.
Well, I'll keep an eye out for that, definitely. So here's one. I applied for a job, did a strong application and got to the final round. However, I struggle with anxiety and 2 out of the 4 interviews didn't go so well. The feedback they gave was mainly a lack of confidence. They said they really like me and have invited me to reapply when a position opens up again. But how can I cope with the interview stress in light of anxiety and dealing with this fight or flight?
Right, I'm going to hand to Simon. I'll tell you why I'm going to ask Simon to answer this, because Simon does a lot of coaching and work with people on the fear of presenting, nerves when presenting. So it's totally relevant. So Simon, I'm going to hand this one right over to you.
Okay, well, I'll preface that by first of all saying one thing that is really helpful, because I mean, as you were talking about right at the beginning, I've worked as both an actor and a director. And obviously, as an actor, you are incredibly nervous, and you know just how competitive it is when you're out there. When it came to me actually being a director and casting actors in plays, I suddenly realized that as soon as anybody comes in the room, your feeling overwhelmingly is that you want them to be good. Okay, because actually you'd love to have the luxury of going, I've got so many good people to choose from. So the first thing to remember is that the people who are actually interviewing you really want you to be good. Okay, so I don't know if that helps in terms of being able to kind of frame it. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is that there's a very easy way to kind of forget. I mean, apart, there are loads of kind of things like breathing techniques you can use, and like yoga breathing or just deep breathing, which can relax you physically. But one thing that a lot of people find really helpful is just to choose like one word that affects everything that you do. So for example, if you kind of say, I'm going to inspire them, or I'm going to excite them, or I'm going to entertain them, or I'm going to reassure them. I mean, you can play around with this, obviously, particularly at home, you can video yourself and see which one word, a kind of a verb that's positive and active, like inspire, like entertain, like reassure, whatever. And if you do that, you will find that if you are concentrating on that one word, you forget about the nerves, you forget about what you may or may not do, and it affects how you feel, the kind of voice you use, the position of your head, for example, within the frame of the picture, everything at all. So that one word, intent, the intention of what you're trying to do is a really good, quick way to get over the whole nerves thing.
Anything you want to add, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Simon is the expert when it comes to presenting and stuff like that. But as someone who suffers with anxiety myself, the only advice I give is a little bit of self-management before going into an interview or dealing with an interview, which is just to take 5 minutes to try and recontrol the breathing with some standardized breathing, 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds out. Create a grounded stance wherever you are. Maybe you're sat, whether you're stood up. Ground yourself and bring yourself as close back to you and you internally as possible. This could be a whole day's course explaining how to manage your own impact. So if it's something you struggle with, do some research on box breathing. That's something that can really help. Something that Marine soldiers use as well as actors and as well as performers. So it's something that can really control nerves and anxiety. And I would say let yourself off of the pressure of it as much as you can, because like Deb said earlier, it's like every single one of these is an experience, a chance to grow, a chance to get better. And if you can keep yourself moving forward and learning from each thing, then hopefully the anxiety doesn't control you going forward. But easier said than done sometimes. So I do appreciate how hard that can be.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think what you've got to take from that is that really positive feedback that you got, which is that they really want to see you again. And, don't see that as a real positive, So, yeah, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. That was very helpful, because one of the pre-submitted questions was actually, do you have any tips for anxiety before an interview? So I think that's very helpful all around. So we've got one more question, which is interesting, which is, what if you are skilled in particular areas, but not so experienced in the wider world as an older, over 60s person?
Oh, just say that again. Let me just hear that one more time.
So what if you are skilled in particular areas, but not so experienced in the wider world as an older, over 60s person?
Yeah, in some ways, it's actually, that's an interesting question, because in some ways it's, if you flip that over, it's the same as a inexperienced young person going out into the work with no experience. It's the same thing in a way. So the key thing is to take all of that amazing experience you've had and talk about the strengths that you had, what you learned, what you can bring to the table, what are your transferable skills. So again, you know, a lot of the soft skills like communication, like determination, motivation, dealing with challenge, you're so lucky because you're gonna have so much life experience that you can bring to the table. And, you know, you've got to take heart from that will be, you know, even if you haven't got experience in that specific role, that is going to overwhelm all of that. You know, if it doesn't, then more fool them, really, you know, because you're bringing so much experience to the table. Just bring it to life. Really think about, because you're going to have so many examples. Think about the things that are most important, prioritize them, the things that you think really will be transferable into this new role. That's what I would say. Anything to add, guys?
I would just add that, again, just to bring back to the question we had earlier about the pregnancy and interviewing when pregnant, and especially in, I can only speak for UK law really because that's where I live, but I don't know about how many people around the world or what other countries might be listening to this. They're both protected characteristics in UK discrimination law. So if someone is not giving you a job because you are over a certain age and are only a specific skill set, that's totally against the law. So if that, you know, that can be quite reassuring as well, is that they're not actually legally allowed to judge you on those characteristics. So, and I would hope that they don't. And obviously this is not saying that this is a blanket statement that no one will, but I would hope that they don't. And if they do, then you have every right to push and fight against that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know. I think things have changed a lot. I think you would have, you know, there would have been a lot more of that discrimination against age, or bias against age, you know, 10 years ago. I'd like to please believe that it's not the same anymore. But yeah, I think you've got so much to offer. You just got to make it relevant. Any other final thoughts, Simon?
Well, just think, you know, that there's been such a loss of a kind of fuss made in the news about people who are over 50, you know, those people who they are desperate to bring back into the workforce. So clearly it's not just something that, you know, Deb is saying in terms of it, but actually that there is, I think, a change. There is a perception that those people, you know, we are more valuable than perhaps people thought in the past. I think the attitudes towards age changing dramatically in terms of, I mean, I'm a really keen runner and a cyclist, and you kind of get the whole thing about that actually, there are some extraordinary people doing extraordinary things in their 90s, you know, breaking records the whole time. So be that person, break that record.
By the way, I've just noticed Joe's bit in the chat. He says, thanks, Deborah. I feel like going for a job and interview now. I love that. That's fantastic. You know what? If we have that sort of feeling that everyone's an opportunity, and who knows what, we get to meet people, try and turn the nerves into excitement. How wonderful is that? It's brilliant. Yeah.
That's why we enjoy doing events like this, for comments like that. So thanks, Joe. So we've only got a couple more questions. If anyone has any more, please do make sure you put them into the Q&A before we end. So this one is, what can I say to the question, what can this job do for you? Or what future can you see with this job? I failed an interview because of this question.
But what can this job do for you? What can this job do for you? And what was the second part of it? Sorry.
What future can you see with this job?
What future can you see with this job? Well, I guess it's difficult, isn't it? Because we don't know what you said. You know what? Here's the thing. I wonder if it's worth questioning that question. Because that's the other thing I think we do. We tend to go blindly into a question and we don't quite know what they're looking for. So is it worth maybe just finding out a bit more about what they're looking for there to actually sort of question it a bit too? So, you know, can you just tell me a bit more about what you mean, or, you know, what you specifically are looking for first? That might be the first thing you could do. I'm always a great believer in that. The other thing is, I would, again, go back to any research that you've done on them and try and make your answer as relevant to that as you can. so that it shows that, you know, it's not a standard answer. I think that's probably what people don't like, those, because they're quite typical interview questions, is the standard answer. The other thing is, why did they say that you failed the interview on that question? I'd want to know what did I say that was wrong? What did I not do right there? You know, don't be put off. The trouble with interviews is we're all human, and who knows, it might not actually have been what you said. It could have been something else that they didn't even realize, or, you know, maybe there was just a better candidate than you that had just that little bit more experience or something. So don't give up. Take heart from it, but yeah, try and make the answer to the question more tailored, if you like. I don't know whether you guys have got any other thoughts on that, Simon and Drew.
No, all I'd say is that sometimes, I mean, it's not exactly the same point that Deb was making about challenging it, but taking some time to really think about it and see, you know, what you might possibly, I mean, genuinely think about it in the interview, because you might be surprised that what you come up with actually is something that actually is really good, but just not being thrown by the question and taking your time. And you might come up with an absolutely blindingly brilliant answer just because you've got the confidence to really stop, think, consider, pull apart, and then give an answer that's based on that kind of reflection.
Tricky question, though.
Mm.
Not going to lie. Tricky
I
question.
think it can also point it back to what we said earlier about the future of work and where this sort of stuff is going, and about, is 5 and 10 years too long to be thinking about in this modern work world that we're living in, when people are probably going to be more like moving within 2-3 years to different roles as it's needed. Yeah.
So we've got a question here about virtual interviews, actually. So this person said, it seems harder to judge performance in virtual versus in person. Would you discuss a few differences between, or items that would be better in virtual interviews? I have worked on the basics in terms of tech, so that's not the issue, but it's more a case of, am I giving enough details or talking too much? I guess it's difficult to gauge some of the smaller things when you're being interviewed over Zoom. So yeah, it's any extra tips for virtual interviews as opposed to in-person interviews?
You know what, I think everything we've talked about applies to both. Absolutely, the preparation, confidence, everything else. But yes, absolutely, it's harder to gauge, definitely harder to gauge. I would say take your time, because, you know, that in some ways you've got more time actually virtually. It feels like there's more space. Some of the advantages are you can be comfortable, you're in your own space, you can, you know, you can be wearing a nice sort of top here and wear whatever the hell you like below, you know. Where's my favorite thing we show you? So, you know, this is what I have underneath my desk. You know, these are little things you can just make yourself feel more comfortable. You also can have your notes all over the table. These are things that you can just really sort of bring into this. But yeah, and don't forget don't be frightened to ask feedback. So if you give an answer, ask them, was that what you were looking for? Is there anything else you need from me? So just keep checking back in, because I think you get less, obviously you can't read as many of the clues in this medium. So ask. Yeah, Elizabeth said she's got slippers like that, you know.
But she wears the whole suit to put her in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Use it to your advantage. Use virtual to your advantage.
Yeah, and I would say that in terms of the virtual stuff, all the stuff we talk about, the presenting stuff that we talk about, the being enthusiastic, the being engaged with the questions, the even just nodding to someone talking or being engaged, they make them bigger. Even if you're going to be conscious of something, you almost want to be more exaggerated because of the small little window we have to show that you're engaged with what someone's saying. And you know, this is the same back. If we were doing training for interviewers, we'd do the same back. And allowing space for someone to finish what they're saying is crucial on a digital platform, because talking over someone can be a very difficult thing to get past if it's constantly clipping the edge of what people are saying. So that's the only thing I would say I would want to add to what Deb said, is just being conscious of letting people finish.
If I can add to that, just I think that we can throw in another acronym after Deb's brilliant shine, one that's actually almost kind of linked to it, which is STAR, which is the thing that we need to think about when we're actually being online, because it's like suddenly you have to be, it's because it's like almost like you're working on television or on film. You have to be your own director, your own script writer, your own lighting cameraman. You have to be the sound person. You have to be the person who's actually dressing the set. But just to keep it simple, the STAR thing stands for sound, together, action, and room. Okay, so sound is like, make sure you've got a really good microphone, because they're all things that have an emotional impact in terms of the relationship that you build virtually. So if your sound's rubbish, then actually it's difficult for the person to hear. It's difficult for them to really feel at ease with you. The together thing is like going, so thank you very much for the question, Drew. Using people's names a lot of the time can be a great way just to kind of bring people in. The action is to do with like this space here. If you sit too far back, you suddenly turn into a hobbit. Okay, so maybe not actually being, or if you're over to the side in some way, okay, it's not symmetrical in some way. So if you're absolutely dead center, you come across as being strong, confident, and in control. And the last thing, the room, is also what's going on in your background. If you've got something that's really, like we have with Drew, something that's really messy, lights flashing, it's distracting in some way. So try and find something that's kind of fairly clean, calm, that actually reflects who you are. And the last thing is in terms of what you're wearing. You notice I've got kind of quite a creamy background behind me, so I've chosen dark colors so I stand out a bit against that. STAR, sound, together, action, room.
Nice.
I've just put that in the chat for anyone that might forget it quickly. So you can copy and paste it yourself. There you go.
Amazing. And so we've come to our last question. Again, if there's any more questions, you've got a couple minutes, guys, to chuck it in. But the last question is quite an interesting one, actually. What can I do to boost my chances in future interviews when the feedback I've gotten from previous interviews say that the reason I didn't get the job is because I don't have work experience in the industry that I'm breaking into?
Oh, it's like chicken and egg, isn't it? What the hell are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
You know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what? The only answer to that one is don't give up. Keep at it. Keep doing your prep. Keep proving to them that you've got all the attributes. And at some point, I promise you, someone will give you a shot. Someone will give you a shot, because you can't wave a magic. We can't wave a magic wand over it. No one can. But you know what? If you keep doing all the right things, someone will give you a shot in the end. They will. And you know, keep your options open. Look for maybe different avenues to get the experience. Maybe there's a way of doing some volunteer work that might give you the right experience, or maybe you could go and do an internship, or anything you can do to sort of get those skills if that's something you really, really want. I don't know if there's anything else you guys have got to add.
Only I'd say that again, because a lot of the stuff we've been talking about in terms of the interviews is all about tell us a time when. So to demonstrate to the person who's interviewing you that you've got the skills that actually you can apply to the job. And if you can absolutely tailor as much as you possibly can to what your experience has been, and also picking up on what Deb said, if you need to get experience that is more relevant in some way, maybe in a volunteer role or internship in some way, if you can kind of go, so I've thought really hard about what it is you're looking for. These are the skills as far as I can tell. Can you confirm that's right? Yeah. So let me go through how I think actually I've got the absolutely best skills given my current experience outside the industry that I can apply immediately within the job.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say about just, use shine to make your examples from your general life, not just your work experience, fit and tailor it to the experience or skills that you might need. I think Simon said it all though.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. I wish this had happened a couple of years before, because when I was being interviewed, I would have used all of these tips. I'm pretty sure I made a couple of mistakes, so I'm pretty glad I'm employed at this point. But thank you guys so much for an absolutely amazing session. I think I speak for everyone, and as you can see from the comments as well, everyone managed to get something or the other out of it. It's lovely to see you again, Deborah and Simon and Drew. Thank you guys so much for everything. And we have one last event this academic year coming up at the end of April, which is also focused around employability. So if you guys enjoyed this, please keep an eye out for that. And again, if you missed it, we will be sending out a link to the video in an email later this week. So keep your eyes peeled and you will be getting an email with the YouTube link as well. Once again, thank you guys for everything. Deborah's book is available with 15% off at your student store. That'll also be in the email, so keep your eyes peeled. And thank you all three of you for everything, and see you guys again at some point soon. Have a lovely week and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.